When I was really little, I actually walked off our dock directly into the lake before I could swim. So, all that to say, it kind of made sense that I ended up in a career path where I'm talking about the ocean. You're listening to the Coastal with Kelly podcast, your go to podcast for waterfront travel destinations, coastal living, and ocean friendly businesses. I'm your host, Kelly Dobroski. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Coastal with Kelly podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. This little, it's kind of like a second intro episode. The first intro is really just to give you a sense of what the podcast is about. This one, though, will give a little bit more about me, why I talk about what I talk about, why you can trust me as an expert on some of the topics we'll talk about, and kind of what I hope you get out of this podcast. So just to start, I've spent the last a little over a decade studying coastal systems. I started out in the coastal science space. My first degree was at Washington College, where I got a bachelor's in environmental science, and then I went on to do my master's at Duke University in coastal management. So while I was doing those degrees, though, I always found myself winding back into communications somehow, whether it was, taking courses that would allow me to do mini documentaries or social media management. I was really drawn to the how do we talk to people about these issues side of things, in addition to trying to understand like how these processes actually work. I've just always loved the water. When I was really little, I actually walked off our dock directly into the lake before I could swim, because that's how drawn to the water I was. So, all that to say, it kind of made sense that I ended up in a career path where I'm talking about the ocean, I'm talking about water bodies, and how we take care of them. But not only did my interest in the water start when I was really young, but once I was in school, that was the first time I traveled out of the country. Growing up, I traveled locally with my family. We have a cabin in upstate New York and we had family in Florida. And so we would travel pretty locally. But it wasn't until I turned 19, or I was 18, I guess, but it wasn't until I turned 19 that I like really got to leave the country and have my first huge travel experience. First international trip I took was life-changing to me. It was while I was a student at Washington College, and that was where I really learned how much I love exploring new places. And it really helped me realize that a lot of the challenges that we faced with managing water issues at home, people around the globe are facing these same challenges. But at the end of the day, it's so important to learn from each other and work together to solve some of these issues. So that was one of the big takeaways for me. That trip, I went to Peru so we could study some of the impacts that are happening to their fisheries that we're experiencing similarly here in the Chesapeake Bay. That was really cool to me to see that we have all these similarities across the globe in seemingly very different areas, that we actually can work together and learn from each other to solve some of these problems. So that was really where I learned to fall in love with travel. And then I came back, I graduated school. That was my sophomore year of college. And eventually I realized that, okay, I'm fully committed to studying coastal management. I really love the ocean. That's what I want to study. So after a year of trying to figure out what I wanted to do post undergrad, I decided to go get my master's degree, and that took me to Duke University, which was just such a good time. I had so much fun. I worked for the drone lab there, and so I had a really good time just learning how to use technology to better study these ecosystems and better understand the ocean. And what I learned during my master's degree, though, is that we have enough information and we know what to do to make the changes that we need to make to protect these places and celebrate these places. We need more than just scientists to know about this. We need to make sure that the general public understands what some of these issues are, and not always talk about them as gloom and doom, but rather share some of the things that we should celebrate that are successes, that they need to understand that these places do need protecting, so that we can continue to enjoy them. Because that's the thing. I want to encourage people to go visit the coast and build a genuine connection with these coastal places, because we love what we experience and we protect what we love. So that's when I realized I really needed to combine my two interests: showcasing these beautiful destinations and highlighting how we can protect them through better business models. And so many companies already exist that are doing this. So that's part of what I hope to do too, is showcase some of the organizations and businesses that are already successfully helping the ocean every step of the way, and that it's good for their bottom line. Like, it's not like you have to make a ton of sacrifices in order to do better business. It's just good for business. So for example, there's already like really beautiful sustainable hotels that incorporate things like serving sustainable seafood or planting mangroves or having a coral reef nursery on site so that guests can experience this and see for themselves how important it is to have these places and that, it's this place-based experience where you're here to snorkel on the reef. You come back and you get to see the coral nursery that they're using to help build more resilient corals to deal with climate change, right? It's this whole interconnected system of connecting people to a place and helping them understand how important it is to be a part of the solution. And there's so many examples that already exist so that they can be a model for other organizations to show that it works and show the steps that they can take to create a more sustainable business model. So stick around if you're into the next big wave of tourism, blue travel. On this podcast, we're going to discover destinations that take us to sea-sprayed towns and businesses that support the ocean, and we're just getting started.